Hello world, and welcome back to this delightfully taboo channel. My name is Sarah, and today I'm going to be taking you through the astrological transits that will be taking place from the 22nd of November until the 28th of November. One of the biggest events that will be happening is that we're entering into Sagittarius season, and Sagittarius season is going to be a lot different from Scorpio season. So from the sun being in Scorpio to the sun being in Sagittarius, we're going to be talking about that. And at the same time, Mars is going to be moving from Scorpio into Sagittarius, or roughly the same time within the same week that we're talking about. So that's relevant. Two planets moving from from Scorpio to Sagittarius. And all the while, they're going to be moving in an aspect with Saturn, the planet of limitations, for just one word. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well. To begin, I'll describe the themes that are associated with Scorpio and then the themes that are associated with Sagittarius, and then talk a little bit about the planets and what they signify and how that change in sign can be expressed by these planetary positions. So Scorpio is this sign that's associated with secrets, things coming to the surface, transcendence, alchemy, because when you find out new information, you can use it in a different way, or it can merge with what you already know, and that can bring out about an insight. And so it's very transformational in this kind of way. And it's also described as kind of phoenix energy. So, burning in the ashes and then rising from the ashes, burning in the fire and then rising from the ashes. When the sun is in Scorpio, is to go covert, to be undercover, and to get the information that you need. So it's very oriented towards getting to the bottom of things for power. So when you add Mars into that equation, you get the archetype of the general, you get the archetype of tactical war procedures. And it's very surgical because that's, Mars is for cutting. And so it's operational, surgical, precise, precision, focused. And it's just a lot more behind the scenes, things bubbling up underneath the surface. That's another kind of scorpionic visual, is things coming from beneath the surface to the surface, subterranean. There's also something about Mars in Scorpio. The covert nature of Mars in Scorpio feels tantric. It feels like the passion is just building. And maybe some lids have blown in many different ways during the season, during Scorpio season. What we're going to experience when the planets move into Sagittarius is expansion. Anytime a planet moves into Sagittarius, it's going to magnify whatever it is, the significations of that planet. So again, the sun, the ideal to which we strive, this can describe the plot of the story. The plot of the story is going from covert, tactical, strategic, operational, to now the plot of the story is moving into this jovial, optimistic, expansive energy. And that might sound very nice, and it's definitely more optimistic, it's definitely more jovial, happy, joyful, less mysterious, more out in the open, big. I said it's moving from saying the quiet part out loud with Scorpio to now saying it loud and proud in Sagittarius. It's much more open with it. And that can also, with Mars in this equation, be belligerent. This I've described as it could result in something like friendly fire, God forbid, but that's kind of the energy, because it's negligence, it's overlooking the details. When we're thinking about Sagittarius and that pursuit of wisdom and that pursuit of knowledge, it's big, it's expansive, it's so much, that's so great, but there's no attention to the finer details. So it's very clumsy. And again, belligerent, drunk, jovial, indulgent. These are all ways to kind of think about. I'm thinking of themes of Jupiter, but it also applies somewhat to Sagittarius too, because Sagittarius is the domicile of Jupiter. And when I put Mars and the sun there, Mars is our passion. The sun is that ideal to which we strive. It's the plot. It's the will. Mars is also associated with will in this way that we move about in the world. It's how this body gets about in the world and operates based on passion, desire, whatever that is leading us. That's what Mars is representing. So Mars moving from this position of I want to be precise, I want to be sharp, I want to be focused, to now I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says anymore. I don't care what they think about me. I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to stand in my power. It's a freedom fighter, Mars in Sagittarius, because Sagittarius is about the pursuit of freedom through wisdom. And putting Mars there, it's like belligerent and not considering different perspectives within that story. And so another way to think about this, Sagittarius is already a fire sign, and it's associated with the bow and arrow, because I'm going to shoot for that. I'm putting my focus on where I'm pointing my arrow. And when you add Mars into this equation with this fire sign, that's already about asserting who I am in this world, what I can acquire knowledge wise or land wise, or those kinds of themes, those kinds of ways of expanding in this world, of growing into this world and becoming part of this world. Now that's already fire. You add Mars, the planet of war, and this is lighting that arrow head on fire, like adding some sort of cloth or whatever is flammable to the end of the arrow and then shooting that arrow. Now, Saturn is placing this check on both of these planets as they move from Scorpio into Sagittarius. So as the Sun and Mars move from Scorpio into Sagittarius, they're going to be hitting an aspect with Saturn. So Saturn's in a couple of signs over in Pisces. And in this position, it's called a square. This is when they're 90 degrees from one another as far as this graphical representation is concerned. So what you would see is a transit chart, or the real-time chart, that is showing where the planets are in position to one another. When they move into aspect with one another, they kind of start to react, or they have a mixture of their energies, and how those interact with one another describes the energy that we experience. So Sun and Mars moving into Sagittarius has that expansion, magnification. Things are getting bigger and more optimistic and more enthusiastic, and that can go overboard. So you have Saturn placing this check, because Saturn is in a square position with the Sun and Mars as they move in to Sagittarius. So it's almost like there's a filter, there's a threshold through which the Sun and Mars have to go through in order to get into Sagittarius season, and that is Saturn sitting at the very beginning of Pisces. Saturn is kind of projecting this threshold through which the Sun and Mars have to cross. And the way that I'm thinking about this is kind of like a sponge, because Saturn is sitting in the sign of Pisces, which is water. It's deep water. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's a lot of wisdom here, mystical, and it's sort of shamanic in bringing dreams into your reality. And especially with Saturn there, because Saturn is about reality. Saturn rules faint appearances. So Saturn rules pointing out when something isn't real. Saturn's position in this is putting a check onto Sun and putting a check onto Mars as they enter from very serious covert operations into Sagittarius expansive party. That check is kind of like a permeable sponge, and it's filled with water. As you think about a dried out sponge, that's Saturn. And then you think about Saturn in Pisces, that's filled up with water. And it's almost feels like a silly barrier. It's like a handshake, like do you know the password to get in? Almost in this kind of like gesture, jovial kind of way, because I'm calling Saturn the arbiter of joy in this week. So it's like we have to drop the serious personality side of us right now. It's almost like the seriousness is going to alienate us. It's like taking a joke too seriously, or when everybody's having fun, but maybe they're a little too drunk for you. And so you've got to be the one that's kind of like, demanding people act in a more professional kind of way. It's like being that person. Um, if you go against the Saturn. So it's funny because Saturn usually gets this reputation for like being stern, constricting, restricting, and spoiling all the fun. But it's almost like Saturn's like the barrier to the fun in this way, where it's like, oh, you're gonna be that serious. And so it's like it's snapping us into reality in a different sort of way than what I'm usually associating Saturn with. Usually Saturn's like that reality check in life where I've been working, and it's still not amounting to the thing that I know I can achieve, but it's just like it's right over that precipice. I just have to do one more thing, and that's what Saturn's asking of us. And and so it's funny to reach the precipice this time and it almost to be like, okay, tap your head and rub your belly and stick your tongue out. It's funny. It's trying to get you to take yourself less seriously because we get into that freedom fighter mode and we're like gung ho about whatever philosophical endeavor we're going on about. And this time the reality check from Saturn is that, hey, you're taking yourself too seriously. But it doesn't say it in that way. It says it in a funny way. It's like take yourself less seriously, but don't be so clumsy that you stumble into a different situation that you don't want to have to deal with. So you don't want to have to be the person that's spoiling all the fun, but you also don't want to be the center of attention at the party, if you know what I mean. That person that's just belligerent, that everybody's like, I don't know, this could get wild, but it's kind of funny right now, you know. And so it's just watching and ensuring that you're not going overboard at the holiday party. But yeah, it's much more optimistic. It's much more enthusiastic. This feels better. This feels lighter. And that's something to celebrate. That's something to be looking forward to. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it today. If Saturn's going to be playing a part in the holiday party, it's nice that Saturn's in Pisces because it's not so judgmental. It's a little bit more, I said, it's less of the stern, judgmental Saturn and more of this Saturn that's like little, maybe had a little too many drinks, but it's still like kind of speaking words of wisdom. So it's like the office boss gets drunk and is very proud of you and is, also telling you, in a couple of years you're gonna shine like a star, whatever. They're just like giving you something to look forward to. So that's where we're at. And if we take it too seriously, we might miss out on some of this optimism that Sagittarius is introducing to the energy. So it looks like a nice beginning to the season, and I hope that you enjoy it. And I will be back next week to talk about the full moon and the other aspects that are shaping the next week as we continue to move through time together.